Hi guys, good evening. My name is Arthur. I would like to speak about the narcissismus, not the illness, but the healthy form of the state as a whole, narcissismus, that I think is more than important to speak about. It's not so common to heard about this, more about the personality disorder, narciss- narcissismus, not the healthy healthy form of I would say this lifestyle. So the reason why I chose this for my third video is, as I mentioned before, if I search something, then I don't find, or I don't find so light, then I believe that it would be helpful maybe, or a suggestion about this topic, in this case about the narcissismus. In usually we don't. I'm living here in Hamburg, so we don't hear. I don't hear so much about this. As a normal state, I've read something, and what I have understand about the state, the normal form, the normal state. Yes, it's between the first state and the second state, so-called psycho development states from Freud. I put it between the first state, the oral, so-called oral state, and the anal state, between the first and second year. But I know at the same time that some schools put this also after the anal, into going into the sogenannte phallische phase, or the phallische state, the third, between third and 5 years. The This is fa- the phase, the phases, the state when the child, as Freud says, realize or experience some feeling towards the responsible person, or parents, or mentor, if the child is going up in this institution. And in this state, or the phases, the child develop some feelings, impulses toward the responsibility person of his or her interests. But and it's called Oedipus phases. So which about Sigmund Freud then built a complex, or yeah, a complex he called Oedipus complex, as maybe you have heard. I put better for my understanding between the first and second phases the narcissism, because the normal development and the experience of the child, of the infants, because in this phase is almost not ego, and then after in the second phases, anal on third phases, goes on with the building of the ego. The reason why I find this more comfortable is because in the first year the human being, the child, develop schizophrenia 0 to 6 months, I believe, and 6 to 12 months more depression. So Freud development this concept after he shows that it's needed the narcissismus as as he called as a libido reservoir, which human beings must preserve his sexual or almost physical energy, hot and cold, I would say. If somebody don't like the notion, the definition sexuality, there is not just sexually how we recognized after 15, 16, whatever, puberty, but a kind of. So if Freud talk about narcissism, healthy form of this necessary development, psychosexual development of the child, is because he saw that between the first and the second year begins the ego to development. Under the child experience the, let's say, suppression, the first suppression from the environment as education processing that begin there in the second almost year. In the first year, so I would say it's not. We can speak about language or recognizing neither about cognition. Which I would say we see somebody that the child sees, have this picture, have this remembering that can understand a few years later. The narcissism is highly important for me because if we live in a country in a suppressive or let's say in a mild form, in a coercive environment, it's also very difficult to for the ego that is into the beginning his or her development to form a healthy ego. And as Freud says, with tolerant education or pedagogy, it would be better for a neurosis prevention. The narcissism that he discovered is important to emphasize that as a mechanism, I would say, before the child uh, begin to have interest to his environment, to the person who cares about him or her in his own family, her own family, or in the institution, or in adaptive family, and so on. The child or human beings or every being, living being, has the energy to live, as we know, for the body, for the processing. And this organization comes as natural. To this organization, I would say, we call later the development of the psychic or spirit, who don't like the word psychic, which later in the theory more, more in the psychiatry, neurology, that talk about nervous system. And so, well, in psychology, these all together fields treated the human being on his inside and outside behavior. The narcissism is never a topic, at least the healthy form of narcissism, more our medicine or medicine plus psychology is more interested the focus of the illness to put the healthy form of narcissism would make, I hope, slightly to understand why without the normal phases of narcissism it's almost difficult to understand the whole diagnostic system or classification system, wherever, Europe or China system or whatever, in single nations, Germany, French, Denmark, Spain, Italian, and so on. A little bit better are here the USA with the DSM, as I mentioned in my first video. This is amazing work. What have they done? 2020, I had the possibility. I have no chance then to go to search in English language more info than I had the possibility here. This is not because it's not possible to have here, but it's also the language that makes in English also more possible to associate on. This is a living and practicing language for more than million, 330 alone in America. And it's a other kind of practicing in the everyday life, what we don't know here in Europe. So I was 2 years very preoccupied with this stuff, and I'm happy about this. The English view allows me to see all the world global view of classifications of psychic illnesses. And This was not possible before in Germany. Even Sigmund Freud, it's called whatever, Gesammelte Werke. It means the whole, or the summarize of works of Sigmund Freud. But you don't find the summarizing all the old works. And I read his old books, 2018. Before 2002, I began with single books that have somebody produced, not his books. Whatever, I was surprised that after I learning, reading, studying DSM-5 and then DSM-4, it was amazing feeling to have a realistic practice viewing. So I'm talking about what I think. I associate free. And one of these very important points is narcissism. You heard in Europe not about this. If you heard about this, then about the illness, not about that this state is almost the half of the normal. And why I'm saying this is because if you are not able to love yourself, you know these phrases. You can't love somebody other, and that is the point. Narcissism is known as 3 points. I know this. Somebody, a child that is narcissism, had experienced himself as beloved for somebody, as worth. He or she is worth to this love from inside. This is the interpretation of the child as feeling or as cognition, let's say. And the third point, after the beloved from outside and the worth to be beloved, it's the feeling of be unique in this world and whatever. Special, wonderful. The third point is the point of return when between the normal state and the illness. When you see the symptoms in the illness, they are exaggerated than more than in other manic depression way of feelings, and exaggerated the own ego person, the own worth. So the narcissism, the normal form, I would say, if you don't worry about the mechanisms, this is very important, but I will explain more than one time. I'm just going at the superface to the beginning of the first videos. After then, I would say I would write also graphic to the better understanding which make the communication better about the topics. And the mechanisms in this moment would help to see why or what experienced the child. That was what I mentioned at the beginning of the video. It is the form of transfer, I would say. So the feeling that we feel later, after puberty, after in adult, older, to somebody in the normal way, normal situation, and in some situation as love, the same feeling that would be in excessive way. In this case, we would speak about illness, but as a mechanism is the same. It is a continuum of transfer of feeling that somebody has experienced as conscious or unconscious. They exist in us. If we have a society that suppress this or expect it from us, from the individuals, to suppress this, it it is very obsessive, compulsive, plus minus depressive way of living, I would say. It's very unpleasant way of living, because in every discussion, in every community where you goes, very the communication is not it's very restrictive. It's not even a slightly neurosis that every human being has to have. Either he's pervert or psychotic, whatever. The feeling in this kind of milieu or environment is very restrictive. If you say something, somebody will misunderstand, and some other will be aggressive on someone from his or her own experience and biography. So, with a healthy narcissism, a little bit, let's say, in the scale 0 to 100 or 0 to 10, 5 or 50, the health of this kind of transfer, of this kind of feeling, I'm worthy for to be loved. You are loved, I'm beloved from you, and I'm unique. Why not? So if somebody says a meaning, yes. If we agree, two persons, the other, dualismus, 0, 1 or 1, 2, the same as in math or physics, atomic theory or atomic chemism theory. Why? Where is the problem? If this exchanges a little bit energy, a little bit intellectual discussion, etc. So this is not possible in this environment, and so I would say the mechanism is deeper, but I'd say for today it would be too much. But it's very interesting to see how Freud this in his the unconscious explained through the eyes on when we speak, when we see somebody, on what we send outside, on what it happened in the other person that we are viewing, seeing, and what we test. As a test, he make a similar word. It's when we see somebody and took back the same energy, the same that we put or learned in the first year of our life. So amazing, amazing. Also, you have to fantasize or to think on yourself. You are free. How the human being or every human being use his eyes to see somebody. After the, I would say, 1, 2, 3 weeks, it begin to recognize the same face of the person of his or her interests, and his if the person would go away and try to look about this person. This is the chemical, physical, electromagnetic states that, as narcissismus, I would say, we call later fear and bye bye, I would say now,